When Larry Hogan won his initial gubernatorial election in the state of Maryland back in 2014, he became just the second Republican governor to win in the state of Maryland in 50 years. The first governor to achieve that feat, Bob Ehrlich, had won his election in 2003. Hogan played a part in that administration, serving as appointment secretary to Ehrlich. As appointment secretary, Hogan controlled all gubernatorial appointments in the state of Maryland from the years 2003 to 2007, creating a tremendous opportunity for Hogan, who had already built political power through the name of his father and the name of his family, to make additional political inroads gearing up for an eventual run for governor. Hogan's election was covered nationally as one of the largest upsets of the 2014 election cycle, as Hogan defeated Lieutenant Governor Anthony Brown for the position. What the mainstream media failed to tell you about that election was that Anthony Brown, who currently serves as the Democrat Maryland Attorney General, shares many donors with former Republican Governor Larry Hogan. For instance, Gary Mangum, who donated over $137,000 to the Republican State Central Committee while Larry Hogan was governor, and at least an additional $10,000 to Hogan's campaigns, also donates to Democrat Anthony Brown, who was Hogan's opponent in the 2014 election. We saw this same pattern arise in 2018, when Hogan's opponent in his re-election bid was a man named Ben Jealous, who received a majority of his donations from out-of-state contributors. In both cases, and in both elections, Hogan faced an opponent in the general election that he shared connections with, and considering that he was an underdog in both races and came out victorious in a state as blue as Maryland, Larry Hogan's political background deserves a thorough and honest investigation, especially now. Heading into the 2024 election, Larry Hogan is now running for the U.S. Senate. After mulling the possibility of challenging Joe Biden and Donald Trump for the White House in 2024 under a third-party no-labels candidacy, which Hogan has helped create with Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia, Hogan was reportedly convinced not to run for president by former President Bill Clinton after Hogan attended a Clinton event in Arkansas as a featured guest in 2023. Now a candidate for U.S. Senate, Hogan's past has come under scrutiny, but not from the mainstream media. A regular guest on news programs on networks like CNN, MSNBC, and other local channels like Fox 45, WJZ, and others have yielded no legitimate questions about the nefarious past of the former governor, and more insidiously, his consistent and prevalent ties to individuals involved in pedophilia. Not only does Larry Hogan have a documented history of associating with individuals charged with pedophilia, but he also has an extensive past of associations with individuals who have died under mysterious circumstances after encountering federal law enforcement. When Larry Hogan was a candidate for Congress back in 1992, a race that he would eventually lose, he was embroiled in a scandal, a very public scandal, when Kevin Lee Hall, an admitted family friend and campaign aide who had been living at Larry Hogan's residence in Upper Marlboro, was arrested for kidnapping and raping a 17-year-old boy at gunpoint. After Hall had been arrested, Ronald Gunsberger, who was serving as Hogan's campaign manager and still serves as a senior Hogan advisor to this day, told the Baltimore Sun that Hogan was unsure whether or not Hall would be allowed to continue to live at his residence in Upper Marlboro, and even went on to admit that Hall had been a friend of the Hogan family, including Hogan's father, who served in Congress for decades. Looking beyond Hall, as governor, Hogan appointed a man named Jonathan Newell as a Caroline County Circuit Court judge. a position in which Newell would serve an extensive 15-year term. That is, until he was placed on leave of absence in 2021 due to a police report that had been filed against him involving two small boys. The parents of these children, whose identities have been concealed due to their age, filed a report with the police after their children reported that Newell, who had invited the kids to his Hooper's Island cabin for the weekend, had filmed them while they were showering. The children also reported that another grown man and 4 other children were present at the residence of Newell on July 22, 2021, the evening that these events occurred. Maryland State Police, who we must note were under the full control of Governor Larry Hogan at the time these events transpired, then began an investigation into Newell, questioning the judge at his home. Within their report on the investigation into Newell, the Maryland State Police alleged that Newell removed a memory card from the supposed camera he was filming the children in the bathroom with and swallowed it. Authorities then brought Newell for a CT scan to a local hospital, which confirmed that the judge had swallowed a small metallic card. As part of their investigation, authorities interviewed several other children that had connections to Newell and had spent time with the judge. The horrifying accounts of these children are enough to make anybody sick. The children stated that Newell would often check their bodies for ticks while they stayed at his property, having the children undress in front of him and touching them. The children also recalled Newell touching their private areas during these checks. During their search of Newell's home, authorities also discovered video footage of Newell molesting children dating back to 2014, and also additional videos of other children showering at his residence. After the FBI raided Newell's home on September 10, 2021, federal authorities discovered Newell dead, having suffered a reported self-inflicted gunshot wound. He was pronounced dead at 6:43 a.m., and suddenly, the FBI investigation into the prolific pedophilia of Hogan appointee Judge Jonathan Newell was over, and the Maryland State Police once again began investigating the apparent suicide of the troubled judge. Somehow, in some way, former Governor Larry Hogan evaded any negative press for appointing somebody like Newell to such an extremely powerful and influential position. Once again, the media, designated to wage war on corruption and to expose abuses of power, only did as Larry Hogan pleased. Just last week, in March of 2024, in the midst of his campaign for U.S. Senate, Luis Barunda, another Hogan associate who served as Deputy State Secretary in the Hogan administration, was federally indicted on 2 counts of distribution of child pornography, sexual exploitation of a child, and possession of child pornography. Barunda was appointed as Deputy State Secretary by Hogan in 2015. He also served as Maryland's Economic Development Commission and the Baltimore Board of Education prior to being appointed by Larry Hogan. Barunda was busted in a sting operation in which he attempted to meet an underage girl for sex. Barunda was arrested late last year in Anne Arundel County during that sting operation. He also unknowingly admitted to authorities during his communications with the sting operation that he had met with 15-year-old children for sex in the past. Local Maryland outlets have been notably quiet about Hogan's connection to Barunda, as they were with Newell and as they are on so many issues pertaining to the former governor, raising the question, is Larry Hogan buying the local media in Maryland's silence? Matthew Palmer, another Hogan appointee, was sentenced to 8 years in prison in 2021 for distribution of child pornography. Palmer, a 44-year-old man of Severna Park, pleaded guilty to distribution of child pornography in March of 2021. He had previously worked as a chief operating officer at the Department of Commerce, and before that as Governor Larry Hogan's deputy legislative officer. Palmer resigned abruptly from state employment in August 2020 and was indicted in January of 2021. According to federal prosecutors, at least 936 images and 368 videos of child pornography were found on Palmer's cell phone, including prepubescent minors, child pornography involving toddlers, and child pornography involving bondage and other sadistic acts. Unfortunately, this is yet another example of the prolific pedophilia surrounding former Governor Larry Hogan. What does this say about the governor himself, or the people that he surrounds himself with? Does this sound like somebody that deserves to be in the U.S. Senate? We also have Roy McGrath, the former Hogan chief of staff, who was designated as the FBI's most wanted fugitive in 2023 before dying in a supposed exchange of fire with federal authorities in Knoxville, Tennessee. McGrath had been indicted for wire fraud, theft, and falsifying records, and failed to appear in court on March 13th, 2023, leading to a nationwide manhunt that ended in a Knoxville, Tennessee parking lot. McGrath allegedly shot himself and then was shot by authorities, an autopsy report claimed. Yet again, another Hogan official who came into trouble with federal law enforcement committed suicide moments before being taken into custody. We hear an awful lot about the Clinton blood trail, but what we never hear about is the Hogan blood trail, a trail that is extremely long and filled with some of the worst elements of humankind. Remember, it was Bill Clinton who reportedly convinced former Governor Larry Hogan not to run for president in 2024, claiming that Hogan's entrance into the race would hurt Joe Biden's chances of defeating Donald Trump. Heading into the 2024 election, it's more than crucial that the people of Maryland understand exactly who Larry Hogan is. And if you get your information from the mainstream media, especially the local sources in Maryland, it is unquestionable that you have not been told about some of the most damning information concerning the character of the man vying to be your next U.S. Senator. Of course, when Larry Hogan appears on these local programs, he focuses on Donald Trump because a simple look into the past of Larry Hogan highlights a record that would make any reasonable person begin to start asking questions. Questions that deserve to be answered. We don't know if Larry Hogan will ever be held accountable. We don't know if he's currently under investigation. But judging by the people around him, he should be. Furthermore, the people of Maryland should know exactly who Larry Hogan is. And with our reporting here at launchliberty.com, we intend to bring you the facts. We intend to bring you the truth. And we intend to do the job that the mainstream media has failed to do for so long. I'm Troy Smith, reporting for launchliberty.com, and thank you for tuning into this exclusive report. I urge you to follow us on Twitter at LaunchLiberty76, to check us out on Facebook at LaunchLiberty, or to head to our site, launchliberty.com, to check out our archives on the former governor and his connections to several pedophiles around the state of Maryland. I thank you for tuning into this exclusive report and hope to see you next time.